the logo, Mandy, is just moving. Oh, we're now streaming live on Facebook. So I'll start us off. So hi to everybody that has tuned in to the live stream. Thanks very much for coming. My name's Caroline. I run a company called Shiny Network, and we do career networking for up and coming directors at all levels of up and coming, from very beginning to just at the edge of being big time. We do live streams and we review work. We're co-hosting this live stream, the first in our autumn series, with Mandy, who, as you'll know, because you're on their Facebook page, they are I've got a little script for myself. They are the world's #1 jobs platform for film and TV professionals. They've got over 2.9 million members globally, which is amazing. They help emerging and established professionals find their next exciting job in the industry. And they also support employers from the creative industries to help find the right talent for their projects. They work across casting and crew, and you can check out their website at mandy.com and create a profile for free. So there we are. Thank you, Mandy. It's really nice to be co-hosting with you. And now we'll move into the main part of the live stream, which is all about crewing. And we've got some fantastic guests here with us from LA and London. So I think I'll start because Siobhan is up on my screen at the moment. We'll start with Siobhan. So Siobhan, can you explain who you are? Tell us about your production company and tell us about the kind of work that you produce.
My name is Javon Cortez Bell, and I'm an executive producer for the Ghetto Nerd Company. And the Ghetto Nerd Company is a agency, kind of hybrid, I say hybrid agency production company that my husband and I started. We create content, we produce the work that we create, all the way from inception to delivery. And we started in New York for about 20 years, and we've been a 1.5 years now in LA. We work on music videos, commercials, documentaries, films. There's just no live shows, whatever comes to mind, we find a way to create it. We hopefully find somebody to pitch it to, and we go from there.
So you're in some ways a small company, but the projects that you work on are pretty heavy hitting, aren't they?
Very mom and pop, very mom and pop. It's my husband and I until it's time to crew up, and we run off of relationships. We've been really lucky and found a way to figure this out, and we've gotten work that's been seen all over the world. So
fantastic.
Yes.
Thanks, Siobhan. So Kate, tell us about you. Tell us about you, your job title, tell us about your company, and tell us about the kind of work that your company does.
Hi guys, I am Kate Morrison. I'm Director of Production at 72 & Sunny in Los Angeles. We have a distinctly different setup in that we have lots of humans on staff. There are probably about 350 people in our LA office, and we are a full service ad agency. So we will come up with brand strategy and creative and execution for our clients like Activision, Google, Tinder, the NFL, et cetera. And we'll oversee that work from creative inception to delivery, whether that's an out-of-home campaign and billboards or an interactive film or anything else that we can think of. I think we are on the agency side. So while we do make things and oversee the production all the way through, we will partner with production companies to actually get the making part done.
Great, thanks very much, Kate. So there we are, there's Ghetto Nerd, mom and pop production company, there's 72 & Sunny, working with the biggest brands in the world and a huge company. And then Neil, would you like to explain who you are, what you do, and where Caviar fits in that universe?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Neil Cray. I'm the head of production at Caviar. I'm the head of production of the London office because we have other offices around the world in Los Angeles, Brussels, Madrid, Amsterdam, and And yeah, I think that's it. There's enough to go around. So yeah, we're kind of like individual offices, but we all kind of work together. We share some of the same directors and the same ethos and everything. So yeah, we mainly make commercials, but we also make music videos, documentaries. We have links to stills as well. So yeah, we kind of approach every job the same, as if it's got the same importance, whether that's big or small.
Fantastic, thank you. So, because I think most of our audience are going to be individual crew members and directors and producers who are looking to move on up in this industry, let's start off. Neil, could you describe what a small production is for Caviar?
Yes, yeah. In fact, there's two different ways to describe it, really, because on the commercial, a small commercial is a bit different to what a small music video would be, or a small documentary. So I'm going to talk about two different things. So a small commercial, in terms of like the crew size, you're probably looking at around, I don't know, 20 people. That'd be classed as small commercial. Medium would be around 40, 50. Large would be over 60. So you can get up to 100 or 150 people on a commercial, which sounds crazy, but it does happen. But then on a music video, a small music video, you could have 3 or 4 people on set, or it could be 10 or 15. So on a music video, a standard small music video would be around 10 to 15 people. Okay. And then a documentary is, of course, like 2 or 3.
Of course, sorry. Yes. Yeah, I started off in documentary and I couldn't believe it when I started seeing, because they're tiny crews really, aren't they? So let's stick with, so looking at these smaller crews, when you need to crew up for something, so you're all good to go, you've got your budgets agreed and so on, who is going to decide on crewing for the different departments, and how is it organized? Let's do music video and commercial. Neil,
want me to start? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so pretty much any job like that starts the same. Well, one that has a director attached anyway. So the producer will ask the director, hey, are the particular people you want to work with, like particular DOPs or production designers or whoever? Now, some directors will say, yeah, I want to work with this person, that person, that person. They'll fill every head of department role and say they're the people I want to work with. Some directors will be more open and probably just say, oh, there's a particular DOP I want to work. Do you have recommends for the other people? So that's how it starts. And then the way we fill in the gaps is like the producer and the production manager and even the production assistants will all have their own recommendations on people. So it's kind of like with the production crew, it's kind of like a talking point to like who would be good to fill this role. And it also depends on the script. So, you know, if we're looking for I don't know, say an art department heavy job, then the production designer is more key for that job. So a lot more attention will be done to find that right person.
So say you have a director who is more open to recommends. Your producers will all be talking to each other within Caviar, won't they? It's a very chatty and word of mouth recommendation kind of way of working, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, generally. So how we work at Caviar is obviously a particular job is assigned a producer, and then generally there'll be a producer and generally a production manager and a production assistant or 2. That like a little bubble of a team. And then we'll have other teams working on other things. But then above that, we'll have exec producers and people like myself who kind of oversee it all. So there'll be a lot of like, if we're looking for people will be suggesting reels, or this person's a great person, you should use him or her. Or it'll also be, hey, if you work with this guy, what do you think of him? Would he fit with this particular project? So yeah, it's quite a chatty, and we're always seeking for like recommendations from people internally.
Right.
I think that's true across the industry. It's quite a recommendation and reputation based industry. I mean,
yeah. So from a production point of view, the people that crew have got to be mindful of are directors, producers, production managers, production assistants. So coming over to you, Kate, when you've got productions going, you go about it a slightly different way, don't you?
And so on the agency side, we are generally looking for a director or a photographer. We will basically look for who's going to helm and bring to life our script. So generally in the agency process, you're through a script and sort of approved vision for the spot. And then you'll look to partner with someone who's going to evolve that vision. So generally, if we're partnering with, say, Caviar, we'll look at, but it's generally talent first. So you'll look for the director and say that director's at Caviar, and that's their production company. Then we'll partner with Caviar to produce the film. So it generally comes director first, and provided director and budget can align and we are on board with the creative vision, then we'll partner with them. And we leave most of the crewing to the production company and the director. That said, there are a couple of key hires where we might have a point of view on what DP are they using. And, if we want something to have a really bright, poppy, colorful sensibility, and the director usually works with this DP, but we find that his work's maybe a little bit darker than we think might work. It's like, we'll sort of push on whether it's the right fit. I do think generally we try, if you're hiring someone to bring their vision to life, I think it's generally best to try to support them so long as all of the things align. We kind of jokingly call it keeping the band together. And I will say, I think in COVID, you're seeing a lot more pressure on that because people are remote. It is a little bit harder to kind of finesse details. I think broad strokes things we're finding tend to work well, but a lot of the detail stuff in COVID is difficult. That shorthand can be really helpful. So we're finding ourselves going back to editors we've used before, directors we've used before, people where there is an established shorthand in a relationship more than we ever did before. On some levels more than I like, but I think in a way that the time requires.
Yeah. So another way of saying that is that it's harder for new talent to be breaking through because you need to rely on safe hands because you can't be as involved, because there are some decisions you have to do. You have to devolve your decisions more than usual.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge for us because it's sort of the opposite of how we would like to behave. I think in the States right now, there's also a conversation about looking at how we are finding talent in light of the Black Lives Matter movement that's happening here and certain initiatives that are coming up. So, I think there's a little bit of dovetailing the need for comfort with also the need to create opportunity and access. So we're pushing on both fronts, which is a little bit.
We'll come on to the importance of diversity in hiring. That's great that you brought it up. And we'll also get into how COVID's changing people's working practices as well in the next round. But just Siobhan, if you would just give us a brief insight into your productions and how you crew up when you're starting a new job.
Well, I'm really spoiled in the way that, I'm working with one director and which is my husband, and we're very much like-minded. So once we got going, it started by working with the same people and over again. And we are very much either word of mouth or by direct networking. And yes, we tend to production hire the same people over and over again. However, for me, because of the diversity issue, we were often in position that we had to fight really hard for to get in. And in terms of looking in position of where we were, there weren't many people looking around us. Therefore, I made it an intention to make our sets 90 to 95% diverse in terms of women and ethnicities. And if I didn't know their work very well, but they had other attributes that either they were consistent or they showed leadership or they had potential talent, and if I didn't trust that I could rely on them in this big job that we had, I make everybody come in on as interns. And if you intern for me one time and I see that you got what it takes, then I'm calling on you all the time. You're now part of the crew. Otherwise, you're gonna intern until I teach you what I need you to know to be on our sets. And then eventually when you pick that up, you know, you become part of the crew. But it was very much word of mouth and direct networking for us.
That's great. That's a really nice approach, the interning thing. Although that has its issues as well, doesn't it? Because if people can't afford to work for free, that takes them out of the loop.
Yes, but usually if we got to a place where we were in contact in the first place, you know, it could, I've had people that have interned for me one time and they had what it took and they became part of the crew. And then there's other people where they had to, you know, work a little while longer. But again, that was establishing in the relationship when we first met. You know, you're going to have to do your dues because I'm not going to pay you to teach you, you know. So if a person is about their hustle and they have other jobs, but, you know, I had somebody that had 3 jobs at one time who lived in Philly. And once he came on, he interned for about 6 months and showed up every time. And eventually he became part of the crew. He moved to New York. He did his time in New York. He moved to LA. He's at AFI and directing and just did a common piece. And I mean, it's part of their journey. So I don't really look at it as something that would, a roadblock that would get in our way. It's actually, if you can make this work, you're probably going to get there, wherever there is you're trying to go.
Great. Neil, does that resonate with you at all, and how you bring new talent in? And I will get back to COVID, but let's just follow this thread.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Yeah, and the intern and the work experience thing is an interesting topic of conversation, because I think recently the government over here changed the law, whereas we're not allowed to like keep a lot of people on internships for a long time, because obviously they're saying, well, you're just having someone working for free, which is true, but they are also getting experience. But I think some of that was abused by certain companies just to keep people in working for free, and then they get rid of them after 2 months, you know. So I can see both sides to it. But I think we are allowed to allow for shorter interns. Don't quote me on the exact days, so it's been a while since I've been in the office. But yeah, so what we try and do is we do try and get people on trainee sort of like, you know, like on our day shoots. So, you know, it's say camera trainees in the camera department, or we get like production trainees to come in and help, or we pay them, but we pay them a smaller rate, if you see what I mean. Okay. So yeah, that is definitely, and we hear you on finding people. You know, you have to see if they're good at the job, you know, because if they're not good at the job, then they don't progress, or that, you know, because not everyone's going to start off being a fantastic producer or production manager, what have you. You've got to learn it from the ground up, and that's kind of all the skills. You know, if that's making cups of tea and coffee, that's what you do, because that supports the team, you know. And then once you've got that level of trust, or you can see that you can be relied upon, or you can think for yourself, you kind of get given more important tasks, and it sort of progresses from there. But just bring it back to just what I was talking about hiring people. So like once we found the HODs, a lot of the HODs will tell us the crew in their departments that they want to work with. So say, for example, a production designer will have his own art team, and he'll say, these are the 10 people I need on my team. Can you pencil them? Or I'll pencil them, you know. So that I think people watching, if you want to be in the camera department, you need to get friendly with the focus pullers and the clap loaders and the DOPs. And if you want to be in wardrobe, you need to get friendly with the wardrobe designer. Okay,
so we'll get back. That's perfect advice. We'll get back into where those people are in a bit. Let's do COVID. How has COVID changed your production practices? So Kate's given us the headlines on what's happening there in agency world in LA in particular. I'm sure the same most places. So Neil, I'm going to stick with you.
Okie dokie. So yeah, it's kind of like an ongoing, ever-changing thing that's happening to the world, unfortunately. So at the start, obviously everyone was on a lockdown, and people were not really shooting anything. And if they were shooting people in their own homes with their own equipment or on their own iPhones, and doing it over Zoom like we're doing now, which worked fine for a while. But as we've kind of evolved through the COVID process, we have found ways that we can try and get back to normal. In England, we've got a great organisation called the APA, which is the Advertising Producers Association, who've really sort of rallied round and like figured out a standard protocol for working on set. And I'm sure it's very similar to a lot of other countries who have, you know, how you would get around working on set with keeping distance, making sure everything's clean, COVID tests, all that sort of stuff. So now in the past few months, we are getting back to shooting normally, but just in a different way. The things to remember are it just takes longer with like the pre-production and the planning, the prepping. Crew size generally has to be a little bit smaller, or locations have to be bigger. So yeah, there's lots of considerations, but I must say, and I'm really happy to say, that we are starting to get back to normal. We're seeing a lot, we're pitching a lot more on through the advertising agencies. So I think it's the same in the industry over in the UK at least. But yeah, it's different. It's different, but you know, the good thing about production is we find a way to get stuff done.
Yeah, that's
Basically.
the job of production, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's interesting and kind of not great news about having to do smaller crew sizes at the moment, but you know, I suppose the general big picture is that the whole world of commercial content production is continuing to grow. So even if the small immediate picture is that things are kind of harder at the moment, I think maybe I'll talk. Everyone say when you talk about it, if you think the general future is bright. Neil, you were talking. Oh, two things I wanted to ask. It must be important for you that potential crew come to you and know what the regulations are already, so you're not having to start from the beginning all the time.
Yeah. So what we have is we have COVID supervisors. So they will come on the tech recce or the tech scout, as they say in America, and do a risk assessment basically, and plan how we're going to work within this location and the crew. And every crew member that comes on board, one of the first questions they'll ask is, who's the COVID supervisor, or do you have one? Do you have a plan for it? And we could say, yes, we're following the APA standard protocol, and we're also doing these bits as well. Supervisor is this person. And because the paramount thing is we have to keep people safe in general anyway, you know, and this is just an added thing we have to do as well. I mean, no one wants to cut any corners on it, and it's making it harder for everyone, but I do think that it's going to really help the production in the whole country if we can keep shooting, keep working safely, and safety is like the number one word. So
I know Mandy did another of these live streams about a month ago, which went through the specifics of how to get COVID aware as a crew member. So definitely people watching should check that out if they want to find out more about that, as they should. Siobhan, you were saying that you had something to add about COVID, which was a slightly different riff on this subject.
Well, in terms of the way we work, we completely shut down once the lockdown happened, and we had to redirect the way that we work completely. We had friends who were DPs who were sent equipment by major companies, and they were in their hometowns in North Carolina instead of in LA or New York, and they were shooting out in the, you know, different elements with their nephews. We had others that were shooting on iPhones around LA. But for us, we got a chance to focus our energy on all the things that we wanted to create and getting those into their respective platforms. I have a girlfriend of mine who is a wardrobe stylist who started a company selling products now that, you know, wand down the clothes, that disinfect bags. She has products for makeup artists. So just a community filled with people who've had to learn how to transition. I don't know if the transition continues from here, if we ever pivot back. but we've shifted more to content creators instead of, production.
Okay, great. Okay, that's interesting. And Kate, if we could you talk a little bit about the importance of having good COVID supervision in your production companies, and you knowing that you can rely on the people you work with to be COVID aware?
Yeah, I think it's a very scary thing here. I think the reality is the US has probably done one of the less good jobs of getting COVID under control. So it's more prevalent just generally here, but I think there is also a reality of there's certain risk involved, right? There was an article earlier this week about a first AD who had contracted COVID, unclear if he contracted it on a set, but he was on set. He then fell ill with COVID and he passed away earlier this week. So, this is pretty real stuff that we're dealing with, and that there is risk associated on set and with being on set and with getting people together. And oftentimes, for the most part, our clients bear the responsibility for that risk because people are coming together to create content for them. And so we need to be very diligent about making sure that we're managing that risk, because the risk is real. And how the risk, or if somebody feels like they're put in harm's way, plays out, nobody really knows. But there's also no insurance for us right now against any of these COVID realities, right? So pre-COVID, we would have insurance that said if somebody got sick on set or the director was sick, that would be covered and we could file an insurance claim against it. The reality is that now COVID is seen as a pre-existing condition globally. So there's no insurance available. So if something does happen to a shoot because of COVID, all of the costs are borne by the client. So we had a case where a talent was a key talent, was exposed to someone who then was known to test positive for COVID. They were only around this other person for 15 minutes. It was outside, but it was enough to prompt an entire shift of the shoot day so that they could confirm they were COVID free for 2 weeks.
Mm.
And, the client has to pick up the tab for that, which, in the case of this, ran hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And so, so that's the kind of like when we're vetting COVID protocols, it's like, how do we make sure that we're covered so that there's no one's health put at risk first and foremost, but also if you scenario plan, how do we know that how do we put contingencies in place that try to stop or minimize the exposure for clients? Because, it all gets very real, very fast, unfortunately, right now.
Mm. So do you have COVID supervisors in the US?
We do. We have COVID compliance officers who are creating health and safety plans for our different production companies. As an agency, we've started compiling our own data in terms of companies that we've worked with that we have felt are stronger. Some are stronger in different areas. Some seem to be better at testing than they are at necessarily set maintenance and cleaning and PPE. So there's a lot to a COVID plan. On a bigger set in the US right now, your sort of COVID costs can run you between $50,000 to $25,000 a day.
Wow. So it just occurred to me while you were talking that for the people who are watching who are most likely to be working, if they are with a production company, it'll be a smaller production company. That could be a source of competitive advantage for that production company if they are shown to be particularly reliable when it comes to COVID protocols. So maybe something, yeah.
We've made decisions. It's become a factor in our decision-making process. Mm-hmm. We have had jobs earlier over the summer where we have, in a sort of two-horse race where we like the creative output from both, we have gone with the company with a stronger health and safety plan. I also think the reality is, when we're talking about spending that much money on health and safety protocols, there's a lot of jobs and humans that are needed to do that work. And manage the COVID process. So I do think there is a world where if you are very up to speed on that and you are of that mindset, it can be a creative advantage or competitive advantage for sure.
Yeah, and of course for the producer type people, or well, anybody like you say who has that mindset, that could be a bit of a job pivot at the moment. You could become a supervisor or a
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's also very little tolerance on sets for people who are not totally buttoned up on that front. At least here, the social distancing is real, the PPE is real, at least on the sets where we're hiring, larger groups of people to come together. I mean, there's a set of 5 creators who have been quarantined together. Maybe it's a different story. But for us, the risk is pretty real. Okay,
cool. Thank you. So let's switch into diversity, and let's just go around people and why is it important to have a diverse crew, and what does that mean for you? And Kate, or let's frame it differently for you. Why is it important that people that you work with have a diverse crew or diverse people in the company, across the company?
Well, I think for us, we very much believe that different perspectives and the storytelling that different perspectives can provide are really key to creating great work. And that there's something in when people come at a project from different vantage points that they make the work better. So for us, I think there's also been a realization in the US over the summer through the Black Lives Matter movement, which has been too late coming, that there has not been enough done, and that systemically there is a huge disadvantage placed on Black Americans. So how can we as a collective work to change that? And I think one of the things that's great about production is that it is a very freelance-based talent pool where you're constantly building these groups of people. So our ability to change the makeup of what those groups look like is pretty vast. And there's huge opportunity there. I mean, it's amazing, Siobhan, when you were saying we're running crews that are 90 to 95% diverse. It's like it is totally possible to do it, and I think for us, we're trying to figure out how can we as an agency work to request that of our production partners in a way that I think is helpful sometimes when you say oh, but I'm used to working with this production designer. Everybody goes to their default, and their default tends to be people who are around them, who look like them, who have the same life experiences of them, right? We all know this from social media. So I think when you have a agency or a client who's asking for something different, and you can say, yeah, but these guys are demanding that we do something different, it provides a little bit of an opening. So there's an organization called Change the Lens here in the US that are asking for 15% Black representation on sets, including department heads. Because I think that's the other thing that's really important is that people go to, great, let's get diversity on set. And it's let's hire a bunch of Black PAs. It's that is not the way to solve this problem. There's no reason that you can't have a Black DP. There are Black production managers. There are, great Black stylists. There's this talent's there. So I think when we push it and you look to kind of, the way that we're looking at it is how do you look to create a ladder of opportunity that's sustainable? So people say, okay, I can see myself being in that role, and there's a world for me that exists here, because these jobs are good jobs. If you get into a working stylist, a working production designer, these are 6-figure incomes that these people can make. And, we need to create access at all levels.
Great. Neil, we have Changed the Lens. It works for UK companies as well, doesn't it? And people watching should go and check out Change the Lens, because you can see all the companies that have signed up to say, we are going to work with these quotas and we're going to hold ourselves accountable, which I think are the two things that really make a difference when people say, I'm going to do this, and I'm prepared for you to ask me about it. There's also,
Absolutely.
there's another organization called Sporus. There's probably loads of organizations, but sporas.com. If you are not a white middle-class male person, and sorry if you are, but if you're not, you can go and join Sporus, and they have a whole huge list of crew. It's particularly for crew, DPs, people at home.
Can you spell that one more time?
Yes, SPORAS, Sporus. I think it's short for diasporas, like diasporas, .com. And if I can, I'll put it, Petra or Sam can advise me where to put the links afterwards for people to find these things, these organizations. So Siobhan, you're on screen, so great that you
love this topic. I love this question.
Okay.
Clearly. Well, my husband went to North Carolina School of the Arts, Director Clifton Bell, and he was actually the only Black person in his directing class. And he's been dealing with this for a really long time. Fortunately for him, when he came out, you know, there were DPs, there were other people he had been in school with around that time. They were hungry. They were from different walks of element, but had this melanin through line that connected them. And they, whether they moved to LA or moved to New York, they stayed in contact. So we had a base to kind of start with. But, you know, unfortunately, what I would find is if I'm an experienced producer, and let's say Miss Kate here is the same experienced producer, 9 times out of 10, and unfortunately more often 10 times out of 10, for whatever reason, you know, she would be hired for that department head over me. And especially that bothered me when it comes to work that dealt in the culture, or, you know, my culture, in terms of hip hop or urban or, you know, Black demographic or Latin demographic. So what I find is that there were a lot, like you said, of talented people that just were being looked over and not given the opportunity. And what was so beautiful to watch in the almost 20 years that we've been doing this is that there are more than just PAs. That's what I was going to say to you, you know, that are available and capable of doing the job. And we've had people come in as PAs and work up to DPs and work up to directors, or, you know, amazing art directors that just weren't given a chance. Mm-hmm. And they had the talent, and we kept a spoon of work going, and they were able to build their reel and their resume and go on and do beautiful things. And I look back, and a lot of them, if not given the opportunity that we provided for them, and through the opportunity that we were provided for, they might have not gotten there.
Sure.
So okay. That was it was beautiful and disheartening at the same time.
And then you said you've now made this commitment, or however long you've had it, this commitment to 95% diverse.
We came in that way.
Meaning. So
we came in that way,
yeah.
Because by the time we became independent, we had worked so hard to get someone to trust us with a job, that we had already known a crew of people that were capable. So once we started, that was an agenda right away.
Yeah. Good. Great. Neil, tell us your experiences of what Caviar is doing, and whether you're in with Change the Lens and all these principles.
Yeah, I'm proud to say we are part of Change the Lens, actually. But prior to that, actually, and prior to all these events that have happened in the past year or so, especially in America, that brought this to like prominence where it should be really. Caviar and the London office especially have had a pretty good track record of hiring diverse crew. And as well as like the ethnic diversities, we're also looking into the social economic diversity, and also females as well. So I don't know how it is in America, I don't speak for England, but the advertising world, especially the advertising world, not the music video world, it tends to be more of like a middle class kind of thing. I don't think generally people know that you can get a job working, doing this, making commercials, and you can make decent cash, as Kate said. Like for myself, for example, I'm from the north of England, and I didn't really know until I went to university that you could actually get a job doing this, you know, or be open to someone like me from the north of England. I thought it was just, you know, London types that had been to the right schools, which in some parts of it that is the case. But that is definitely changing, and that's something definitely that's been on our agenda for a long time, because if you do employ people from different backgrounds, whether that's ethnicity or social ones, you do get different perspective on things, you get a different voice, and it changes the vibe, you know. I'm sure we've all been on those shoots where everyone on the shoot is 45, white, either posh or whatever, and it's just not as fun as like a diverse shoot, you know. And not say that's, you know, everyone likes to have fun on shoots. That's the cool thing about it. It's a cool job. And you're making something good, even if you are making a toothpaste commercial. You know, it's better than laying paving slabs in the rain. So yeah, we're very proud to be part of it, and yeah, with Spores as well, that's a fantastic resource, because people we work in production, and producers will know what I'm talking about. Is we spend a lot of time looking at reels, and we spend a lot of time looking for the next cool person to work with. Because that is what the directors want to do as well. They want to work with the hot talent, and the hot talent doesn't start at the top. You know, they're hot talent when they're growing, and they get hotter and hotter. And if you're with them at the start, then that's good for you, and it's good for the director. So Spores is a great one. If you follow them on Instagram, they put regular posts on there to a lot of their crew as well, and it's not all just heads of department as well. So it's a good thing to keep an eye on. So we've got 15 minutes left. So let's get into the nice nitty gritty of, if you are out there and you're a gaffer or a spark or whatever, camera assistant or assistant editor or whatever. So we've gone through the kind of people that you want to connect with. You want to know directors, you want to know heads of department, you want to know producers and all the people in the production. So these are all the people that you want to be impressing. You want to have a bit of a reputation as a hot talent. You want to be, something Kate said earlier, or it might have been Siobhan, you're looking for consistency, you're looking for people who are reliable, you're looking for people who show leadership. So these are all the things that you're going to be presenting yourself in that way. So how can people get that over to you, and where can they connect with all these people? Where are the best places to find them, and the best ways to present yourself? Neil. So yeah, if it's people I don't know, like I receive quite a lot of emails every day from prospective people right across the board, from DOPs, people straight out of university, wardrobe, hair, a whole range, and a lot of people trying to break into the industry. And I think that is a good way to approach someone with a clear email of what you want out of it and who you are, and if you'd like to meet for a coffee, what have you. Because the worst thing is getting a cold call and someone saying, "Hey, I'm so and so, I want to work with you," and you're like, "Yeah, I'm really, I'm very busy doing this particular job." If I've got it on email, I do read them. I don't get back to all of them, unfortunately, because I'm usually quite busy, but I do read the majority of them. And what I do is I use my email as my search function. So what I mean by, if the email is very clear, like on the title is makeup artist, or something like that. So when I search makeup artist, a whole lot will come up, and I go, "Oh yeah, that's the person who emailed me," and I look at their CV or resume or showreel or website, and then I get back to them that way. So if you are someone like a makeup artist or DOP, production design, that kind of person, a good website is good. If you're not that type of person, you know, more like production or what have you, a good CV, a clear CV with list of credits and all that sort of stuff, that's a good way to approach me.
And so, if people were to pull out a few highlights, is that a good thing to do as well at the top of their email? I just got awarded for this, I just worked on that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. What I would say is on the emails, because I get a whole range, and the ones that stick out to me are the shorter emails. I do get some that are like quite a few pages long of waffly intro, and to be honest, unless I'm completely don't have anything else to do that day, I won't have time to read it, so it won't get read. So just keep it clear and concise. But also the other part I was thinking about this earlier is the time you send the email. It's like if you send me an email on a Saturday, I'm not going to read it out of principle. But if you send me an email on Monday at 10 o'clock, yes, I'll read it. But so do you know what I mean? It's just simple things like that you should think about someone that you're sending it to sitting on their desk. That's when they're going to read stuff and they're going to look at stuff. They're not going to look at it on a Saturday. So you and you also don't want to be that person who's sending things every week saying, hey, have you seen this? Have you seen my email? Do you see my email? It's like, you know, just because I haven't got back to you, which I apologize to people I've sent me emails and I haven't got back to. But I do store them and I do refer back to them. And if someone puts on there that they'd like to come and meet me, generally everyone who puts it on that, I do try and make that happen. So wow. As a tip. But at the moment in current COVID times, I don't want to invite anyone to my house. So.
So in terms of brevity, would you be happy if people sent you an email which was basically maybe 10 bullet points and a link?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, what I would touch on it is when some people send show reels, not everyone, but what I don't like looking at in show reels is a montage show reel. I just like to see the actual spots rather than like all stuck together, because you can't really tell much from that. Okay. That's a personal preference anyway.
I hear a lot of people say that. I think you're not on your own there. Kate, probably a bit more relevant. It's probably a bit more relevant to talk about production companies or maybe production services with you, because you, as you said before, your key concern is securing the talent, and the production kind of follows on behind that. How could new production companies perhaps put themselves in front of 72andSunny and say they'd like to work with you?
I agree with all of Neil's principles in terms of brevity is key. Giving us a sense of what you do and what your style is and what your taste is as quickly as possible is probably the best thing to do. You know, it's like if you open up, and whether that's a newsletter that comes in or an email from a production company or a CV that we're looking at, it's like, I want to know what you've worked on, what your experience has been, and what your and almost what your exposure has been. So, you know, if you've only worked on, I don't know, business to business fiber optic commercials that maybe are not creatively interesting, but you've made interesting decisions and everything that you've been done really as tastefully as they can, then that's quite interesting to me. But I do think it's a little bit like, what's the easiest and most succinct way to get your proof point? I mean, it's very hard to hire people who aren't very entry level in this world without some sort of reel or visual device. Essentially, it's a visual medium that we're in. So, you know, whether it's a reel or a website or a portfolio or something, we need that. Just telling me on a sheet of paper that you've done these things it's like, then I either have to go Google them and make sure that I've got the right one, or like, you know, you've got to imagine that, to Neil's point, you've got a million balls that you're trying to keep in the air. You'd love to know what good talent looks like, but there's sort of like, it needs to be packaged to be easy to you. And the more kind of like, hey, I'm so-and-so, here's 3 amazing things I've done. Here's 3 thumbnails of those things so you can get a visual sense of it. And then if there wants to be more sort of context underneath that, that's fine. But at least then I have a sense of like, oh, am I interested or not interested? Do I think this is a fit for us or not?
And not forgetting the other thing that they can do in that little brief, lovely little email is to say, I've worked on COVID compliant sets and I know how my department should behave.
Yeah.
Thank you. Siobhan, tell us about how people can get to work with you. I think we've covered the interning side of it. So let's say people are experienced, they just don't happen to know you. So how are they going to end up on one of your sets?
Well, I use all the energy as part of the vetting process. So if a person has emailed me and I don't have time to get back to them, I don't put that pressure really on myself. You know, it's kind of their job to keep themselves on the forefront of my mind. So if someone has been emailing me once a week for 2 months, when it comes time to think about that, you know what? There's somebody who's been emailing me for 2 months. I'm going to call that person because now the consistency is what sticks out in my mind. In all kinds of situations that are similar to that, I use everything to be part of the vetting process. So contacting us through email, not to mention, I'm a talker. I talk to everybody I come into contact with, and usually someone, oh, I know so-and-so who, or I wanted to do, or so, oh, here's my number, let's stay in contact. And, you know, eventually maybe that will work out to where they end up on set, and maybe not. But I don't put too much pressure on the vetting process, especially when it's, if I'm trying to get to someone, it's my job to keep getting to them, you know, and so I don't put that pressure on myself to either, you know, get back or oh, I've got a call, or it's, you know, we'll let it flow, and however it happens, it happens. But I'm very open about it, I feel.
One thing, it feels a bit mad to be saying it, but I do know that it happens, that sometimes when people are sending their repeat emails, they start getting a bit cross. Like, I've written to you 5 times now and I haven't heard back. Not a good idea, is it?
You know, and I respond, you know, I apologize that you feel that way. However, if you're interested in working with me, you'll either continue or you are free to dismiss yourself and not email me.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's not brain surgery. So I don't take it as serious or as personal.
Okay. So one thing that everybody...
Hey, you're going to say something?
No,
Oh,
I was just going to say something. It's kind of funny, that question of like the update email, because the way that we work on Google backend, and I'm sure most people do, and it does compile all of your emails together. So it's like when you reply to a thing, so like all that happens to me, like my experience is I get your email and the original email you sent me and the email before. So and as a producer, ultimately you want to hire somebody who's going to solve a problem for you, right? So when you come to me and you're like, hey, here's all the things I can do for you, that's great. When you come to me and you're like, I need you to solve this problem of you not responding to my email, I'm like, oh my God, like you just don't want to get into business with somebody who's like creating work for you.
Another fire.
Even if it's the email response that you haven't given that you should have given. It's like, I still feel like being a problem solver in this situation.
Yeah, great. And I notice you all 3 of you have talked about emails, whereas sometimes on conversations about directors or talent, people all talk about Instagram and only talk about Instagram. But so email is alive and well in this world of crewing and production.
I think that's telling my age, but yes. The younger people do, DM me, if that's what it's called. And then somehow we either make our way to text or make our way to email. I think Instagram for me personally is a great connecting platform, but it's not somewhere I dig in and kind of do business. Mm-hmm. Even if I found talent on Instagram, remember the last music video we did, I actually found a dancer in another state than where we were filming. And I contacted her through email, through Instagram, but I felt like the time that she was taking to get back to me was a little, she might have been a little sketchy about what I was offering. And so I went around and I got in on her bio and found out how to contact her, you know, through email, and then it panned out. But you know, that confirms for me that Instagram is great for the connection, not necessarily for doing business.
We've
Yeah.
got a question that came in, by the way, which is, I think it's, there isn't a precise answer for this, but it's how many people are allowed on location once you begin shooting? Neil, let's jump over to you for that one.
Sure, yeah. It depends. It depends in which country you're in, because I know some countries have like certain limits on the amount of people, or they used to. It might have changed recently. But in the UK, there isn't really a limit on the amount of people you can have. It's about how many people can be there safely, keeping the distance. So I've seen a lot of things recently from studios, which have like, instead of like your overhead plan, it's now got like a plan of like where the routes would be, where the different bubbles of like the art department is, the lighting department stand over here, the production bits are here. So everyone's in little bubbles and there's one-way systems to walk around. So once you've got all that, you can't fit as many people in, say, the studio, if you're in a studio or location, whatever. So so yeah, it just depends on how many people you can fit in safely. So there isn't a cap on the amount. It's just job by job basis what's safe.
Do you have a cap in the US?
No, there's no cap here.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have 2 minutes left. Agencies and diary services, are they, would you go to them before you would start looking at individual people who've contacted you direct? They're more expensive, aren't they?
Well, for me, I would pretty much always go to the agency or the diary service. Well, not always, but it depends. Say, for example, like a DOP, most of them are with agents. So you go to the agent, find about the availability. Other crew members, they're often with diary services. And yet it can be a bit easier sometimes. And often if you call a crew member direct, the officers say, well, can you speak to my diary service? Yeah. So we try and respect that, do the diary service first before the crew member, but not everyone has an agent or a diary service. So you just got to, it's kind of like local knowledge really. You just got to do a bit of digging before you call them, I find.
Yeah, actually completely opposite. We go directly. And then if they request, we go through. But agencies I go directly to almost 100% of the time.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess it's just different in America. That's where it's here.
Kate, is that your experience, sir?
We probably depends a little bit on the job. We're certainly not adverse on something where you're like, oh, this is a bit like there's like a sort of a more established job that's being done in a more sort of traditional manner. You'll go more through the agent booking in that way. And then I think where we're a little bit faster moving, a little bit more dynamic, a little more fly by the seat of our pants, we go
directly
direct to people, you know. And then to your point, if it's like, oh, hey, can you book this for my person, then we will honor that. But usually sort of, you know, I think for us, it probably comes ultimately out of a budget, right? You've got a line item that says you've got X to spend. So, you know, do you want X or do you want X minus the agent fees? You know, so we more and more of that is definitely happening in the States, I think of.
That's interesting. Okay.
That is interesting because I think over here we just pay the same fee, and like say for example, if the DOP, I don't know why I keep using DOPs, but we'll pay a DOP a particular rate and the agent's fee comes out of his rate. You know, it's not separate. So if we book them direct, they'd still charge the same rate to us.
So we're at 8 o'clock. I think one of the key things to pull together out of this, because we are in the middle of COVID still, is that it's really important to be aware of what the rules are and how to be safe. And if you are, wherever you're working, whether you're looking to work with any of these fantastic people, or if you're just doing small shoots yourself, and that becoming more aware becomes a big advantage for you to be able to sell as part of your skill set. But overall, we've covered some brilliant subjects and got some really, really excellent information and insights. I really hope that people have found it useful. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, LA. Thank you, London.
No problem.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys very much for having us.
Me too.
Okay, cheers.